In a poll I posted asking which of 4 things I should turn into a fighting game, viewers picked Adult Swim, the late-night block on Cartoon Network with shows for an older audience that could get quite surreal. While Cartoon Network tried a Smash Bros. Clone, I feel the Adult Swim cinematic universe could fare better as a crossover fighting game, considering how experimental Adult Swim is with everything, and that's what we're here to look into. Moves, mechanics, and playstyles for these Adult Swim characters will be based on what they do in their respective shows and ways actual fighting game characters function. While we don't have special mechanics planned out, this hypothetical game would play like a traditional fighting game, either more grounded like Street Fighter or off the walls like Marvel vs. Capcom. To cover a good amount of shows, we're only going to have 1 character per series, except for Aqua Teen Hunger Force, which will have all 3 members as separate characters since they're all pretty unique and I really like it. For the rest, the fighters chosen may not always be the main characters. It will be whoever seems like they would work best in a fighting game, but they can still have moves that call in other members of the cast for a quick assist. We will exclude some shows for the sake of time or lack of ideas on our end, and we won't cover syndicated shows that are not owned by Adult Swim, so sorry if you wanted the Seth MacFarlane fighting game hour. Finally, I've been saying we since I'll be joined by my co-host, NegetiveX.
Hey everybody, it's me, NegetiveX.
You call that an intro?
I like Adult Swim, so I was an ideal person to choose. So this is awkward. I don't know how to start. Hey everybody, how's it going?
Forget the intro, let's just see if it's a good idea to turn the Adult Swim block into a fighting game. Space Ghost Coast to Coast predates Adult Swim, starting off as a late-night Cartoon Network show with more adult humor, so with Space Ghost essentially being the first Adult Swim character, he should be the main jack-of-all-trades Ryu-like character of the game with proper tools for close, mid, and long-range combat. For a projectile, he could have a beam, like the arm laser he loves to fire and threaten people with. Either he could shoot this at different angles or at different horizontal heights, like how RoboFortune utilizes her arm laser. His Shoryuken style attack could mimic his stilted flight animation that he would use to fly to and from the studio. And his forward-moving Tatsumaki-like attack can be similar to Martian Manhunter's Charge Forward in Injustice, where he phases through his opponent and they drop from the sky, landing in front of him, since Space Ghost can also phase through things. The device on his collar allows him to teleport, as seen in many fighting games, and turn invisible, as we see with certain NetherRealm Studios characters.
Although I would hope that this time they actually make the invisibility move useful.
The invisibility is never beneficial in a fighting game.
Oh right, yeah.
I could also see him having an overhead projectile where Moltar lowers a TV on the opponent like how Space Ghost would conduct interviews. The TV could even have Easter eggs referencing past guests. For super moves, I'd say a bigger beam and Zorak striking up the band, bouncing the opponent on all the instruments as they play. I also expect lots of dry humor from Space Ghost, otherwise he would just be a standard Injustice character without his wit. And remember, he was the announcer in Cartoon Network Punch Time Explosion, so he has some type of experience in a fighting game. Alright, breaking into the Aqua Teen Hunger Force entries, I initially thought that Frylock would be impossible to make a moveset for since he's a floating box of fries, but then I realized that MODOK is essentially a floating head and he surprisingly worked well in a fighting game. Frylock can just be MODOK, both have technology, lasers, weird appendages, levitation, and similar body shapes. Some of Frylock's inventions can work like MODOK's bombs, barriers, and cubes of knowledge, and his fries can move like MODOK's Happy Feet.
Oh, that's cute.
Then his main method of attack would be many different eye lasers, which are all the rage in fighting games. Meatwad can turn into whatever he wants to, so he should play like Double from Skullgirls, who turns into random objects for some attacks. Meatwad can fall on or charge at his opponents with all of his transformations, the igloo, the flower, that Dancy likes to do. He can even turn into meat versions of the rest of the roster like how Double turns into other Skullgirls characters. And there you have it, another oddball fighting game character that plays like how an Aqua Teen Hunger Force character should fight.
I think he should also have a Kano roll attack, where he just launches himself forward.
You mean the gravity-defying Kano Ball?
Kano Ball, except it would be called Meatball in this situation.
While you're at it, give him the Blanca Ball and Melina's Ball Roll too. I want to see if someone can win a match just using ball attacks.
Melina wins.
Master Shake will be one of those characters that references other characters with his attacks. I see him setting a lot of traps. His own attacks can involve him poking with his straw and firing a projectile, which is a glob of green drink from his cup body, kinda like what MODOK has with his slime, full circle. Opponents can slip on the drink to create stage hazards and stun them. He could also have an acid fling attack that can do burn damage or proximity damage based on where it lands on the screen, using that pink creature that took over his mind once. I could also see him having a teleport using the Brood Witch, which brought Shake to hell for a second after he tried to eat it and then brought him back, so he could take a bite of the sandwich and then it puts him somewhere else on the screen in a flame. Part of me thinks he should also have an overhead command stomp in reference to one of his first moments in the series when he crushes Meatwad's radio and says dancing is forbidden. Since Shake annoys Carl the most of the trio, and Carl dies a lot, Carl can come in as a human shield with the excuse that he's here to yell at Shake in the middle of the match. He'll stand right in front of where Shake summons him, like most fighting game shields that function as a special move, such as Parasol's Egret soldiers eating hits, allowing her to move in, or even grabbing the opponent briefly.
Every time he eats a projectile, he'll yell, "Get out of my pool!"
His ultimate attack can be where the Moonanites come in to fire the quad laser. The bullet is enormous, there is no escape, jumping is useless. This would work like any giant slow-moving fireball that fills most of the screen, like Yoga Catastrophe.
When the giant laser ball comes out, Cold as Ice by Foreigner should also be playing in the background.
Isn't that detail a bit too minor considering the copyright fees?
Every time!
Already we have an oddball from a series. The Brak Show was a pseudo spin-off of Space Ghost that premiered on Cartoon Network but primarily was seen on Adult Swim. While the dim-witted yet lovable Brak was the main character, he did not do much that would work well in a fighting game, nor did the rest of the main cast, except maybe Zorak. But a big reoccurring character that I had in mind was Brak's neighbor Thundercleese, who was a tall, human-sized war robot. While he had few unique animations like everyone else did, his were a lot more violent. His general reaction to everything was shoot a bunch of lasers. I feel he'd be a strong zoner since he would usually fire missiles or lasers in rapid succession, so 3 or more would appear in a row. I think Aegis from Persona 4 Arena has a style of weaponry, with bullets that come out at all angles to make it difficult to get in. He has rocket boots to put him in a flight mode, which can switch up the angles at which he zones, yet another Aegis tactic. He has a few other odds and ends in his fortress that he could bring to the fight to lock his opponent down even more. For example, I could see him using a bomb that detonates after a certain amount of time passes. He also likes to lock on to targets when he gets a chance, so a slower, high-risk, high-reward homing missile will go well with his other zoning options. So overall, he needs lots of guns, explosions, and quips that tell us that time is an abstract concept to remind carbon-based lifeforms to monitor their ongoing decay. Sealab 2021 is another series where I love the main cast, but I think one of the more odd characters would work best as a fighting game character. Well, they're all odd, but I mean a character that was probably not expected for the roster. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure Captain Murphy could fling soda cans as an attack, or one of their Bizarro forms could fight, but we opted for the minor late addition to the cast, Charcot, the result of Marco having sex with a shark producing a shark with human limbs. A mobile land shark is something I forgot we needed in a fighting game ever since Stanley was never made playable in Skullgirls. I'd completely understand if his melee attacks with his human limbs were weak, since that's not why you play him. Charcot's mouth is his strong suit, he just needs to fight with various attacks that let him use his giant jaw. He can use it for throws, command grabs, basic and special moves, restanding, it's all encompassing.
Charcot could have a bleed ability similar to what Baraka has in the current Mortal Kombat, or in what Aaron Black had in MKX, where essentially these characters would stab you with something, break it off inside of you, and then do constant damage over time. Charcot having shark teeth would lead to the obvious ability of biting someone in the neck, tearing a gash out, and having them take constant damage.
If you want anything else, he uses a gun in a few clips, and his ultimate attack can be him grinding a motorcycle wheel against his opponent, like when he jumped over a pool of Fonzies when training for his civil service exam. With Harvey Birdman being a bird superhero lawyer, it would help if we had a fighting game with a winged superhero or a lawyer to go off of. Oh hey, there we go. For basic attacks and movement, Birdman can function like Hawkgirl in Injustice, where he goes into a low ground flight mode to do bigger combos and set up shenanigans. As a retired superhero, I'm sure his combat could have some actual technique to it. And to take a page out of Phoenix Wright's book in Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, he could attack with some of the evidence from his biggest cases in the show. You can have the typewriter from the Boo Boo case, a bowling ball from Yabba Dabba Don, and why not just toss in Yacky Doodle?
I was also thinking that Avenger, his pet bird, could serve as a projectile similar to how Quan Chi's bat worked in MKX. A projectile that comes out quick, can be overhead or low, and just do some damage.
If he doesn't go the little buddy route, Avenger could just be a direct projectile like Strider's bird, or drop bombs like Strider's bird, but the bombs are actually
more evidence.
Mentok the Mind Taker can even come out quickly to do some mind taking to paralyze the opponent temporarily. For super moves, I could see most of them being practical but not flashy. One super could be Birdman pulling out the French stuff when he was using tanning cream to substitute for the sunlight that gives him his powers, so it would be a short-term strength boost super. Another super could be where the Deadly Duplicator clones Birdman for a short period of time, giving him a shadow that repeats his attacks a few frames after he does them, like Yun and Yang from Street Fighter. Maybe even X the Eliminator could come out of nowhere attempting to steal Birdman's crest, but missing and hurting the opponent instead, like one of Lex Luthor's airstrikes. His ultimate super move would be where the whole team comes out to gang up on his opponent in a cinematic wonder, just like the fight scene from the series finale. With all these tools, it ensures that Birdman can take the case when being selected for a fight. I've hardly watched Squidbillies, but it's that show that Adult Swim keeps bringing back despite me seeing no one ever talk about it, so its longevity should mean something for this game. The main character, Early, could play like Shuma Gorath with how he crawls around and extends his limbs. It's a perfect fit, only replace all the lasers with shotgun blasts. With Robot Chicken being a show that mostly references other things, there's not many original characters in it. I could go with the nerd, but the character that actually looks the coolest to play in a fighting game is the chicken from the intro. Cyborgs are mainstays in fighting games, and we've even seen playable chickens in fighting games before. The chicken has to use his laser eye for a bunch of attacks, like Kano in Mortal Kombat. And in one of the intros where he was operating on the Mad Scientist, we see he has a buzzsaw in his wing, so he can have some Cyrex-style close-up moves. Then just take his Robo Wing and give him all sorts of blades and tools hidden inside for a strong close-range game. Finally, since Robot Chicken loves to reference things, he should have a move like Shenko's Item Toss projectile, which would cycle through a myriad of random objects that sometimes reference other Capcom properties, like Monster Hunter. Only instead, the chicken throws items that reference Robot Chicken sketches, like the Nerd, the Gummy Bear, the Snail riding the Turtle, Seth Green, and any licensed property that would be fine lending itself to the game, which may be few. Brock Sampson from Venture Brothers would be a no-brainer for the roster, being a bruising powerhouse type of character who would be focused on raw strength and in-your-face physical attacks.
100% classic rushdown character.
Actually, I was thinking big-time grappler due to his size and how easily he can pick up anyone who's about to die by his hand.
But yeah, no, that works too.
Really? He could use both fighting styles. He would play like a Jax type of character, where he's very mobile but closes out his hard-hitting combos with a grapple attack that pulls his opponent out of the air. Plus, Jax and Brock both like to grab by the neck and pummel for a bit, so it's a good fit. Attacks like Jax's enhanced running punch or elbow drop that don't combo but hit hard and have armor to muscle through the opponent's attacks fits Brock's game plan. Brock punches through everything and only needs a few hits to do all the damage. Then of course you have to equip him with his knife, which could give him other grappling techniques like Kano in Mortal Kombat, where he stabs his opponent and flings them in the air to do a combo that ends with a strangling command grab. And if we want to give Brock a pity projectile, he can throw the knife to give him a single zoning option. He'll put away the knife though for his ultimate attack.
Brock's super should really revolve around his car. He has a beloved classic car that he constantly uses to mow down the Monarch's troops. And it's generally not just a simple hitting them with the car, but frequently he will drive on top of them, tires spinning. It could be very similar to Batman's Batmobile super from Injustice, only instead of just hitting the person, you would hit him and like stay on the body, spinning the tires, doing extra damage in a real nasty move.
This is bad. Hyper Combo KO. Player 1 wins.
The Boondocks has excellent choreography on its fight scenes, so it did not take much stretching to make Huey work as a fighting game character. Huey knows martial arts and has a handle on various types of weaponry, including the nunchaku, katana or broomstick, and airsoft gun, making him a good candidate for a jack-of-all-trades character using these weapons in a single moveset.
I kind of imagine him like Deathstroke from Injustice. He can get up close, do a lot of damage, but he can still rely on some projectiles from far away. Quick, low damage. Hit, hit, hit.
His basic hand-to-hand attacks would be fast and great for starting up combos. The nunchaku could be used for close-range pressure and combo extension, like how Liu Kang from Mortal Kombat or Maxi from Soul Calibur use theirs. The katana or broomstick can work like various samurai in fighting games, or the aforementioned Deathstroke to give Huey more range than the nunchaku, but start up slower as a trade-off. And the airsoft gun can zone if Huey's combo enders leave his opponent at a distance. The ultimate attack should be one powerful, cinematic, electrified punch, recreating a sequence from Huey's fight with Bushido Brown, either landing brutally on top of the opponent or sending them flying in the opposite direction.
You win.
We might as well go for the lead singer of Dethklok as the main Metalocalypse rep. Nathan Explosion himself would be a mid-range fighter who would have vocal sound-based attacks and a headbang to hit his opponent with his long hair to pop them up for some combos. I did not mean to turn him into Sindel.
Sindel wins. Fatality.
Nathan's combos alone in this game may not be that great, but we have a special gimmick to improve them.
I kind of envision a Kotal Khan type character, where instead of totems coming up giving special buffs, it would be more the other members of the band coming up, with one unique ability for every band member. Pickle'S the drummer, for example, he's a raging alcoholic, so his ability could be give armor to Nathan, so he can take a couple hits, because when you're drunk you tend not to be able to feel pain. Murderface is a really draining character. Everybody hates him. Meter drain. When Nathan lands hits, Murderface could cause meter drain on the opponent. Squizgar Squizzles, the guitarist. He's a sex god, very fast on the guitar. I say a reduction in startup frames for several attacks, allowing combo extensions. And finally, Toki. Toki is the most beloved members of the band, especially among young little girls. He's such a bright, friendly character. Health regeneration when he's out.
For an ultimate attack, my mind defaults to having the band come together to play a Dethklok song, but there's another route we could go to keep with the calling in teammates motif.
I think the ideal choice would be them going with their bread and butter, their manager. He's highly trained, is very defensive of the band, and he could just come out and beat the opponent down for them.
You win.
The Warden from Super Jail would play like a Pocket Fighter character. Nearly every attack in Pocket Fighter has the characters turn into alternate versions of themselves as wide-ranging Capcom references, just as the Warden turns into different versions of himself every few seconds. He's constantly changing his outfit and form when doing anything, so the varying sizes of his transformations can represent light, medium, and heavy attacks. For his overall playstyle, his high-octane nature allows for a speedy rushdown character with some tricky setups and pressure. Since he likes to frivolously teleport when monologuing, he should teleport mid-combo to annoy his opponent and keep them guessing on how he'll reset his combos, like Takeru Natsu's pressure game in Soul Calibur. He should also set up Jailbot as a trap, where he'll hover over the arena, and after a set period of time, Jailbot will reach downwards and leave the opponent in a hanging state for some free damage if he catches them. The super move for the Warden should be Super Jail, being he throws the opponent into Super Jail for a cinematic attack, making them experience its wonders and mostly horrors. It would be like Dark or Chaos Dimension, where you pull your opponent into a world of terror seen from the outside, only maybe you'll see it on the inside for the Warden's move. Eric Andre would be the most unpredictable character in the game. You never know what's coming up next on his show, and his fighting style should reflect that. I think he has to be like El Fuerte from Street Fighter, where he has a running stance and does all sorts of crazy moves out of the run, even to a point where he could just read his opponent and do anti-airs or slides or what have you instead of doing combos if he felt like it. I'm not even sure if Eric Andre should have combo options being full of non-sequiturs. Moves he could do out of his unpredictable running stance include an overhead where he smashes his opponent with a blunt object like when he destroyed the art exhibit or Hannibal's cop car, a body slam since that's how he enters his talk show sometimes, a headbutt since he chases people a lot and that seems like a good end result, and firing something out of his mouth since he does a lot of gross mouth stuff. I'd suggest an egg. Clean and simple. He should also have an attack that hurts himself to do more damage to the opponent since he loves self-mutilation bits. For a super move, he needs one where he fires a lot of gunshots in a row, seen in many fighting games, and afterwards he says, "Who killed?" insert opponent's name here. Someone also suggested giving him a command grab where he strangles the opponent saying, "Let me in," and I like it. His ultimate attack would be something so unexpected that my mind can currently not comprehend it or do it justice by simply talking about it. Maybe also a super move where he drinks ranch dressing for a power-up or defense boost. Legalize ranch. Rick Sanchez would be the obvious choice for Rick and Morty's rep, with Morty helping out.
I like Morty being used as a human shield. Generally, Mortys are replaceable in the show. When a Rick loses his Morty, for example, a new Morty is sent in to replace him.
Okay, so he'll help out by getting hurt before Rick does. He can be a counterattack, extra barrier, stage impediment, pick your favorite Morty. That being said, you'd mostly be playing as Rick. Looking at the few scientists we've seen in fighting games, they can get up close and physical by enhancing their strength with machines, and Rick falls into that category.
His powers are doing whatever he wants, but only when he wants to. So kind of like settling on a style of fighting game character can be a little rough for him, because he has the technology, but he also gets like up close to fight in people's faces. One of his moves could be a stun move called True Level, where he kind of places it on the ground, and when the enemy touches it, it holds them in place for a second so he can land a hit. This is of course being in reference to Morty's Mind Blowers. He should have a parry with his Epidermis Line Defense Matrix, where when the enemies touch him, it launches a giant blue energy wave, knocking the enemy back, similar to the episode with the Vindicators.
And you can't forget Rick's basic fireball, which should be a straight laser shot, since that seems to be his generic go-to weapon.
Rick should also have teleport and portal abilities similar to Noob Saibot from the Mortal Kombat series. A big part of Rick's character is using his portal gun to be able to go into different dimensions, so that sets up a really easy teleport style character where he can hop in one portal and pop out of another, and also force enemies into the portal to pop out into combo areas.
For a super move, he should put on his armor from the Purge planet. Since it gives him more weapons without changing his body size, it should be like Dante's Devil Trigger, where it powers him up and gives him access to new moves while it's active. For his ultimate attack, I could see him doing something cinematic.
I personally like the idea of him calling in the Council of Ricks, or sending in SEAL Team Rick to do the damage.
I'd envision that to be like Felicia's Call for Help super move, only a lot more violent. Mr. Pickle'S was a somewhat common suggestion. I only watched some of the first season and was told it gets much better by the second season, but basically I could see Mr. Pickle'S being like the small array of quadrupedal animals that have been playable in fighting games. I'd mostly go with Amaterasu in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 since you can replace all of her elemental magic with Mr. Pickle's satanic magic. However, I'd add a bit of MK11 Kotal Khan since he has that big cat attack that ends with him biting the jugular, and Mr. Pickle'S does go for the teeth-based violence. For Gaz Diggsy, you're essentially playing as her entire team. Ballmasters 9009 takes place in the dystopian future where all the sports have been eliminated and replaced with this one team game. In this fighting game, Gaz has various options for playstyles focusing on her team and Baby Ball, the crass living handball. One way to utilize her teammates is in a manner similar to Ginyu in Dragon Ball FighterZ and Rachel in BlazBlue, where you want to fill the screen with your allies, but there's a limit to how many can be on the screen at the same time. Flip can fire his belly button projectile Umbilicus, which functions like a low beam. Leto is always low energy, so he can temporarily stun the opponent when they walk into his area. Didi should perform some fast physical attacks akin to Berserker Barrage, because she can go crazy and maul people when provoked. Bob walks around being cute and doing nothing else except acting as a living shield, so he can be a Princess Peach Toad counter move. Lulu and Ace can be characters that Gaz summons to throw the ball at and have it fire at different angles to increase power or speed and set up for some complex combos. It would be like how Doctor Strange's flames go straight forward in Marvel vs. Capcom, but when he sets up some Grace of Hoggoths, it changes the range, power, and side effects of the flames. Alternatively, she could play like Viola from Soul Calibur, where she sets up Baby Ball at different locations on the screen and has certain teammates pass it back to her to alter the various ways the ball can hit the opponent on the return. Regardless, Gaz could still fight on her own as the team captain. While utilizing her teammates maximizes her potential, she could have short range attacks with her team covering the distance. Her attacks would be very rough, like shoulder charges, and she should have something where she drinks booze mid-fight since she's an alcoholic. Maybe a temporary power boost from the beer, but she loses it after a certain time period and gets tipsy where she cannot call her teammates during the recovery period. Maybe she can even stack her drink buffs for a greater risk-reward factor.
So what you're saying is the drinking could be kind of like Bane, where you could do it multiple times to increase their power, but once you go over a certain level, she vomits and then is super weak.
Frank West and Bane disadvantages, I like it. Her ultimate attack should be Ace and Baby Ball forming the Ball Master, where Ace fires Baby Ball at a ludicrous speed towards the goal, or in this case the opponent. It would be like any ultimate single hit projectile, where it's fast, eats any attack that comes its way, and is invincible on startup, like Genmu Zero in Marvel vs. Capcom. Samurai Jack is basically an Adult Swim show now, so why not include him? His moveset would not be as unique as others for a fighting game since he would play like a traditional samurai, which has been seen in many fighting games. Jack was trained as a serious fighter, so it makes the most sense that he would attack with no-nonsense sword strikes. And then you can give him, what other attacks can he have?
He needs to have a command grab that throws the enemy super far. If you remember the episode where he's in the challenge with the Scotsman to throw the rock, and he throws the Scotsman super far because he can't throw the rock instead and wins.
Oh, that's right, he can fight without the sword. He definitely needs battle damage as the fight goes on in the game. He gets scratched up all the time, his hair comes undone, he loses his robe and fights in the training thong, he looks like he goes through war by the end. And with that, I think we'll end it off here. We covered a good array of shows with a varied roster. There are still plenty of Adult Swim shows we did not discuss, like Frisky Dingo, Xavier Renegade Angel, Black Dynamite, Tim and Eric, Fooly Cooly, that's right, Adult Swim owns that now, and even Perfect Hair Forever.
Perfect Hair Forever?
Along with series that deserve even more representation, so maybe we'll make a part 2 someday. Now, what did you think of these ideas and what would you add to them? Which unseen characters also deserve a spot on our imaginary roster? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, thank you all for watching and we will see you in the next video.